Hello everyone, welcome back to RxProdigy. As you all know that we have started new video series related to tissue. So the introduction of tissue, its types and different types of cell junctions present in tissues are explained in previous video. You can find the link of previous video in the description box. So let's start today's session related to the epithelial tissue. So this epithelial tissue, it is the simplest form of tissue present in the human body, and it is arranged in a continuous sheets and in either single or multiple layers. The So this epithelial tissue are the tissue consist of cells which are arranged in a sheet like manner. So they are present in either single layer or in multiple layer on a basement membrane, and they are arranged compactly, very closely, and they are held together tightly by with the help of different types of junctions. Okay, so the function of epithelial tissue is covering and lining of the body, and there are three main functions which are performed by the epithelial tissue. First is the selective barrier. They act as a selective barrier by regulating the movement of material in and out of the body. Then second, they act as a secretory surfaces, as epithelial tissues are present over the surface of different types of glands present in the endocrine system. So they act as a secretory surfaces and they release the products onto the free surface. Then third function of epithelial tissue is protective surfaces. They provide protective surfaces over the body lining or over the cavities of the organs of different organ. Okay, so the general features of epithelial tissue. This epithelial tissue is divided into apical surface, lateral surface and basal surface. You can see in the diagram the apical surface, that means the surface of the tissue cells which is present towards the lumen. Okay, then lateral surface, that means the surface which is present between the two cells, that means the surface which is present between the adjacent cells of the epithelial tissue. Then next surface is the basal surface. The basal surface is present between the cell and the basement membrane, that is known as the basal surface. Now you can see in the diagram the epithelial tissue consists of the epithelial cells and the basement membrane. The epithelial cells are divided into apical surface, lateral surface and the basal surface, whereas the basement membrane is divided into basal lamina and the reticular lamina. So this basal lamina, it is present towards, it is closer to the epithelial tissue. You can see in the diagram the basal lamina, this basal lamina is present towards the epithelial tissue, and the reticular lamina is present towards the connective tissue which contains the blood supply. So the nutrients which are coming from the connective tissue with the help of the blood vessels will first come to the connective tissue and then goes to epithelial tissue. So basal lamina, they are closer to and secreted by epithelial cells, and these basal lamina contains laminin, collagen, glycoproteins and proteoglycans, whereas the reticular lamina, they are closer to underlying connective tissue and they contain collagen secreted by connective tissue cells. Now here some characteristics of epithelial tissues are mentioned. For example, the epithelial tissue contains the own nerve supply. They have their own nerve supply, but they are avascular in nature. Avascular, that means they lacks the blood supply, so blood supply is not there. So whenever required, wherever nutritions are required, the nutrition will be provided with the help of the connective tissue. As connective tissue contains blood supply, so the nutrients and other important material which are required for the growth of cell will be provided by the connective tissue by the process of diffusion. Okay, so this epithelial tissue have high rate of cell division and they have high rate of renewal and repair mechanism, and their importance in the body is for filtration, protection and filtration in the body. Now this epithelial tissue can be divided according to the uh, according to their presence. For example, they are classified as covering and lining epithelium, and second they are classified as glandular epithelium. Covering and lining of epithelium, that means they covers the body organs, they covers the internal and external body organs. And glandular epithelium, they are present in different glands of the endocrine as well as exocrine system, and they are important for the secretion of different kind of hormones. So first is the covering and lining of epithelium. This covering and lining of epithelium are again get classified according to the arrangement of cells into layers and according to the shapes of cells. Different kind of shapes present different kind of cells are present on the basement membrane, and according to their shape they are classified. So according to the arrangement of cells, they are classified as simple epithelium, pseudo stratified epithelium and stratified epithelium. Simple, that means they are having single layer of cells on the basement membrane. Then pseudo stratified, that means they are stratified, means they are having multiple layers on layers of cells on the basement membrane. And pseudo stratified, that means the tissue contains only one layer of cells but they appears like they are having multiple layers, so hence they are known as pseudo stratified epithelial tissue. Now next kind of classification of epithelial tissue is according to the shape of cell. So they are classified according to the shape of cell. First is squamous epithelium, then cuboidal epithelium and columnar epithelium. In squamous epithelium, the cells looks like a tile of a floor. Then cuboidal, they consist of cube like structure, that means they are having same length as well as same width. Then columnar, so the cells of the tissue contains higher length than their width. Classification of epithelial tissue according to shape, we have seen that they are classified as squamous epithelium, then cuboidal epithelium, columnar epithelium and transitional epithelium. So squamous epithelium, that means the cells are present, they appears like they are looks like floor of tiles, and their function is for rapid passage of substances. They allows rapid passage of substances. This is the function of squamous epithelium. Next is cuboidal epithelium. Cuboidal epithelium having cube like structure of cells, right, and their function is secretion and absorption. Most of the cuboidal and columnar epithelial tissue are important for secretion and absorption. Now this cuboidal may contain microvilli. Microvilli, that means projection. Okay. Next type is columnar epithelial tissue. So columnar epithelial tissue are much taller than they are wide. That means they look like column, and they may contain cilia. Cilia, that means hair like projection or the microvilli. So their function, the columnar epithelial tissue, are important for secretion and absorption. Next type is transitional epithelial tissue. So these tissue have ability to change their shape. So cells can change the shape and they can transition from flat to cuboidal. So example, that location of the transitional epithelial tissue is urinary bladder. Most of the urinary bladder part contains transitional epithelial tissue. Next, according to the arrangement of cells in layer, the epithelial tissue are classified as simple epithelium, then pseudostratified epithelium and stratified epithelium. Simple epithelium, that means single layer of cells are present on the basement membrane, and their function is diffusion, osmosis, filtration, secretion and absorption. Now this simple epithelium having single layer of cells, but the shape of cells may get vary. So according to that, according to the shape of cell, they are again also classified into simple squamous, simple cuboidal, simple columnar, then simple ciliated columnar epithelial tissue, simple non-ciliated columnar epithelial tissue. These are these are according to the shape of cell and single layer of cells present on the basement membrane, right? Now second is the pseudo-stratified epithelial tissue. Sorry, stratified epithelial tissue. Stratified, that means multiple layer. Two or more layers of cells are present on the basement membrane and their function is protection of underlying tissue. Then next is the pseudo-stratified epithelial tissue. Pseudo means they looks like but they are not exactly. So pseudo-stratified means they appears to have multiple layers because of cell nuclei are at different levels and all cells do not reach the apical surface. So we will see all the epithelial tissue one by one. In that, first is the simple epithelial tissue. As it is simple, so single layer of cells are present on the basement membrane. Now this simple epithelium tissue is classified into simple squamous, simple cuboidal, simple columnar and pseudo-stratified columnar epithelial tissue. Now these columnar epithelial tissue, simple columnar epithelial tissue are again get divided into non-ciliated and ciliated epithelial tissue. According to the presence or absence of cilia, they are get classified. Then pseudo-stratified columnar epithelial tissue again get classified into non-ciliated and ciliated epithelial tissue. So first is the simple squamous epithelial tissue. So simple is there, so single layer of cells are present, and squamous, that means tile like cells are present on the basement membrane, correct? So in this simple squamous epithelial tissue, the nucleus is present in the center of the cell and the nucleus is flattened oval or spear in shape. Okay, you can see in the diagram the nucleus is present at the center of the cell and it is oval or flattened spear in shape. Now the function of this simple epithelial tissue is filtration and diffusion. We have seen that simple epithelial tissue are important for diffusion, osmosis, filtration and absorption. So you can write simple squamous epithelial tissue have function filtration or diffusion. So example of simple squamous epithelial tissue is small intestine. Next, second, cuboidal epithelial tissue. Cuboidal, simple that means single layer of cells, and cuboidal, the cells are cuboidal in shape, so they are classified as simple cuboidal epithelial tissue. So cuboidal shaped cells are present and the nuclei are present at the center and they are round in shape. In case of squamous epithelium, they are flattened oval or spear in shape, but in case of simple cuboidal, the nuclei are of round shape and they are present in the center of the cell. You can see in the diagram the nucleus is present at the center of cell and it is round in shape. Now again, the as it is simple epithelial tissue, so the function is secretion and absorption. In case of simple squamous epithelial tissue, function is diffusion and filtration. Okay, so example of simple cuboidal epithelial tissue is duodenum. Next type of epithelial tissue is simple columnar epithelial tissue. Simple columnar having single layer of cells and the shape of cell is column-like shape and the nucleus present in the cell is oval in shape and it is present near the base. Near the base, that means it is present towards the basement membrane. Okay, now this simple columnar epithelial tissue is again divided into non-ciliated and ciliated epithelial tissue according to the presence or absence of cilia. Cilia, that means hair-like projection at the apical surface, that means at the top of the epithelial tissue cell. So in that, first is the non-ciliated simple columnar epithelial tissue, that means cilia are absent but it contains microvilli on the surface of apical region of epithelial tissue. So these non-ciliated simple columnar epithelial tissue secrete mucus which serves as the lubricant in the digestive, respiratory, reproductive and urinary tract. So you can remember that non-ciliated simple columnar epithelial tissue present in the digestive, respiratory, reproductive and urinary tract, and their function is secretion of mucus for the lubrication. Okay. Also, it prevents the destruction of stomach lining by acidic gastric juices, as it secretes mucus on the digestive lining, on the lining of stomach. So it will protect the stomach, protect the lining of stomach by the gastric acid juices. So examples we have seen: non-ciliated simple columnar epithelial tissue are present in the digestive, respiratory, reproductive and urinary tract. Next is ciliated simple columnar epithelial tissue. As it is ciliated, so cilia are present at the apical surface. Now these are present, ciliated simple columnar epithelial tissue are present on the respiratory tract, and it contains goblet cells are interspersed among the ciliated columnar epithelial tissue. Goblet cells are important for the secretion of mucus. Okay, so mucus is secreted by ciliated simple columnar epithelial tissue, and that mucus on the surface traps inhaled foreign particles. As ciliated simple columnar epithelial tissue are present in the respiratory tract, it contains goblet cell, and goblet cell are important for the production of mucus, secretion of mucus. Okay, so cilia is present as well as mucus is secreted by the ciliated simple columnar epithelial tissue. So the inhaled air, as it may contain foreign particles, dust particle, so these will be get trapped by these goblet, by the mucus and cilia present in the lining of respiratory tract due to the presence of ciliated simple columnar epithelial tissue. Okay, so beating cilia moves particles to the throat for removal of coughing and swallowing or sneezing. So cilia also moves oocyte to the uterine tube. So you can remember, ciliated simple columnar epithelial tissue are present in the lining of uterine tube and respiratory tract. Next, pseudo-stratified columnar epithelial tissue. Stratified, that means multiple layers. Columnar, column-like shape of cells are present in the tissue of epithelial, correct? But here pseudo is present. That means they appears like they are having several layers, but actually they have single layer. Why? It's so because the nuclei in the simple epithelial tissue, the nuclei is present in the center of cell. In the columnar tissue, the nuclei are present towards the basement membrane, towards the base of the cell. In case of stratified epithelium, multiple layers are present. So pseudo-stratified, in these the single layer of cells are present, single layer of columnar cells are present in the epithelial tissue, but the nuclei which is present in case of columnar tissue, the nuclei is present towards the basement membrane, but in pseudo-stratified the nuclei can arrange itself in any space, any level of the cell. So it look like it is having the multiple layer of cells on the basement membrane. All the cells are arranged on the basement membrane in single layer. Some cells do not extend to the apical surface, and ciliated cells bear cilia and secrete mucus. If cilia are present on the surface of apical region of cell, then they secrete mucus, and non-ciliated cells lack cilia and the goblet cells. Next type of epithelial tissue is stratified epithelial tissue. The stratified epithelial tissue contains two or more layers of cells on the basement membrane, and their classification is based on the shape of cells present on the basement membrane. So, stratified epithelial tissue are classified as stratified squamous epithelium, stratified cuboidal epithelium, stratified columnar, and transitional epithelial tissue. So, we will see this one by one. First is stratified squamous epithelium. Stratified, that means several layers are present. Squamous, flat or tile like cells are present on the basement membrane. Now new cells are pushed up towards the apical surface. So multiple layers are present. So new cells will be pushed up towards the apical surface. We have seen three surfaces of epithelial tissue: apical surface, lateral surface, and basal surface. Apical, that means the surface which is present at the lumen. Lateral surface, that means the surface which is present towards the cell, which is present towards the adjacent cells. And the basal surface, that means the surface between cell and the basement membrane, that is the basal surface, right? So the as stratified epithelial tissue contains multiple layers, so cells will be pushed up towards the apical surface. Okay, as cells move further from the blood supply, they get dehydrate and harden, and they get die, right? So as epithelial tissue lacks blood supply, but connective tissue contains blood supply, so the nutrients required for the growth of epithelial tissue will be provided by connective tissue. So the cells which are present towards the basement membrane will get higher amount of nutrients from the connective tissue, correct? And the cells which are present towards the apical surface will get lower amount of nutrient, correct? So the cells which are present at the apical region will get dehydrate, and they will get harden, and then they will get die, as they lacks the nutrient, they lacks the blood supply, correct? Now these stratified squamous epithelial tissue are again get classified into keratinized and non-keratinized tissue. Keratinized tissue contains the keratin. Keratin is the fibrous protein. So if the cells contains protein keratin, then they are called as keratinized protein, and they are present in the superficial layer of cell. The epidermal region of cell is made up of this keratinized protein. Next is the non-keratinized. That means if protein keratin is not present in the cells, then they are called as non-keratinized, and example is mouth and esophagus. Next is stratified cuboidal epithelium. Stratified, that means multiple layers are present, and shape of cell will be cuboidal in nature, and their function is protection. Example of stratified stratified cuboidal epithelial tissue is esophagus. Next, stratified columnar epithelium. Stratified columnar epithelium, again multiple layers of columnar tissues are present, but the columnar cells are present at the apical layer only, and the cells which are present below the apical surface will be of cuboidal in nature, correct? So you can see in the diagram the cells which are present in this region, that means towards the basement membrane, are cuboidal in nature. Their shape is cuboidal, but the cells which are present at the apical surface, they are columnar in nature. They are having columnar shape. Okay. So function of this stratified columnar epithelial tissue is protection and secretion. Next type is transitional epithelial tissue. Transitional epithelial tissue, the name itself indicates transition, that means change. They have ability to change their structure. So they are mostly present in the urinary system and they are present in the urinary bladder. Okay, so variable appearance. In a relaxed state, the cells appear like cuboidal, and when they are stretched they get flattened and they appear like squamous in nature. So the next type of epithelial tissue is glandular epithelial tissue. We have seen first type is according to the covering and lining of epithelium, and second is glandular epithelium. So glandular epithelium have first endocrine gland. Endocrine gland are the gland which are also known as ductless gland. So the secretion of these gland will come directly into the bloodstream and then goes to the desired site of action, right? So secretion of these endocrine glands is called as hormones, and these hormones get diffused directly into the bloodstream, and from the bloodstream it goes to desired site of action. So functioning of endocrine gland or glandular epithelium tissue is maintaining homeostasis. In that, next is the exocrine gland. Exocrine gland contains duct, so the secretion of exocrine gland will get secreted into the duct and then it get empty onto the surface of epithelium. So example of this exocrine gland is sweat gland, then earwax, saliva, digestive enzymes, then mucus. These are different kind of exocrine glands present in the body. Main example is sudoriferous gland, or we can say it as sweat gland, present in the skin, which is present in the dermis layer of the skin. Okay, structure of exocrine glands. In that, the multicellular glands are categorized according to two criteria. Ducts are branched or unbranched. If they are branched or unbranched, and according to that they are get classified. So shape of secretory portion of gland, according to the shape of secretory portion of gland, they are classified as simple gland, compound gland, tubular gland, acinar gland, and tubulo-acinar gland. Okay, simple gland does not get branched, compound gland get branched. Then tubular gland, they look like tubule, so they have tubular secretory part. Acinar gland have round secretory part, and tubulo-acinar have tubular and round secretory part. So you can remember, simple do not get branched, then compound get branched, tubular have tubular secretory portion, acinar have rounded secretory portion, and tubulo-acinar are the combination of tubular and acinar gland, so they have tubular and rounded secretory portion. So you can see in the diagram the simple tubule-like shape, and they have duct. So in the duct the secretion will get enter and then it come into the secretory portion. Okay, so then simple branch tubular, then simple coil tubular, simple acinar tubular, simple branched acinar, then compound, that means they are get branched, compound acinar, compound tubulo-acinar. So the function of functional classification of exocrine glands, they are classified according to their function as merocrine gland, apocrine gland, and holocrine gland. Merocrine gland synthesized on the ribosome attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum, processed, sorted, and packaged by Golgi complex and released from cell in secretory vesicles via exocytosis. Then apocrine glands, they accumulate their secretory product at the apical surface of secretory cells. Then holocrine glands accumulate the secretory product in their cytosol. So here we have completed epithelial tissue. In the next lecture we will see about the connective tissue. Thank you for watching.